Over my long career as a financial controller, I have seen so many different types and shapes of employee fraud. And although it may shock you, it doesn't surprise me at all to know that 75% of employees admit to have stolen from the company at least once. And in today's video, I'm going to show you common ways that employees steal from the business. These are 100% real stories based on my decade and a half working as a controller. So if you're a business owner or you work in accounting, this video right here is going to show you things that you normally wouldn't see or pay attention to. One of the most common ways that employees steal from the business is called skimming. And the name skimming comes from the way you skim the fat off the surface of a bowl of soup. And skimming in finance means that you steal the cash from the company before the cash even hits the books and records. And I know everyone likes a good story, so if you're in the mood for story time, grab yourself a cup of coffee, tea, or your favorite beverage and find a nice cozy spot to sit down. This story happened at a local movie theater in my town where the manager is a friend of mine. He has found out that the employees were stealing cash paid by the moviegoers before the cash even hit the cash register. Now, let's take a look at how they did it. This was a small town, old-fashioned movie theater where most of the moviegoers paid cash for the tickets. Then, when they are handed the tickets by the girl at the ticket window, they head over inside the movie theater and hand over the tickets to the usher, who will take the tickets, mutilate them or rip them apart and deposit them into a bag, and then he would show the customers to their seats. At the end of each night, the manager, who is not suspecting anything is going on, would compare the number of mutilated tickets to the amount of cash in the cash register, and that's how he reconciles sales. And this sounds pretty simple, right? And it sounds like a pretty good way to reconcile sales, right? You compare the number of cut tickets over to the number of cash, and now you know that your sales reconcile. But there was one major loophole in the process. The girl in the ticket window has hooked up with the usher dude and came up with a way to pocket some of the cash each night. Now, the way this scheme worked is that they were basically recycling through the used tickets. The trick is that the usher kept some of the tickets intact instead of ripping them apart. Then he handed the tickets over to the girl in the window to reuse them with new customers. And this allowed them to pocket between $100 to $200 each night. So as you can see, the way the fraud works in this case is very, very basic and simple once you find a weakness or a loophole in the control system. Now, I'm going to ask you, if you were in charge, if you were the manager, how would you design controls to hedge against this type of thing from happening? Now, take a minute, maybe pause the video and dazzle me in the comment section below with your ingenuity on how you would battle this type of thing. Now, you see, with every employee fraud, there are three elements that must be present. We call it in finance the fraud triangle. Now, the fraud triangle is made up of three things: pressure, opportunity, and justification. Now, let's look at each one. So for pressure, that refers to the motivation of the employee. That is, what is driving him or her to commit fraud? Now, these pressures may be unrelated to work and sometimes even personal in nature, such as an overwhelming debt or addiction, divorce, or some other family issues. In some cases, however, some of these pressures may be work-related, such as high demands by supervisors to meet certain performance metrics. Now, the second element of the triangle is opportunity to commit fraud, which means that there isn't enough controls in place to stop the theft from happening. And it's interesting to note that a study had found that 60% of employees would steal if they knew they wouldn't get caught. Justification is the final element in this fraud triangle, and it just refers to how the person justifies to themselves the fraud they committed. So, for example, a person might feel that it's okay to steal because an injustice was done to him or her. And this injustice could be, for example, not getting paid what they deserve, or that management doesn't care about their workload, etc., etc. Now, back to the movie theater story, and some of the ways you can hedge against this type of fraud would be putting up a surveillance camera in or around the ticket booth to make sure that the ticketing employee feels that they can be caught if they don't use tickets from the fresh ticket roll. And another thing you can do is put up a credit card accepted sign and make sure it's visible on the window to encourage customers to pay with credit card, since it's much more difficult to steal from. And if you're still watching this video, it means that you enjoy a good story. So let me tell you another story about employee fraud from my personal life. So Friday night is pizza night in my household, and every Friday around 8 p.m. I head over to the local pizzeria with my wife and 3 kids and get a large pie, half plain, half sausage. Okay, so this is what we do every Friday night. I usually walk in and the guy who works there knows me, and so he usually yells something like, 1 large pie, half plain, half sausage, coming right up. So he knows me, right? So that's what he gets from me. We sit down at one of the tables, and soon enough we are served hot, delicious pizza. At the end of it, the guy usually says something like, I hope you enjoyed the pizza, Mr. Hanna. That will be $26. And I usually hand him over $30 in cash, and he takes it back to the register. Here's the interesting thing. I noticed that he simply opens up the cash register, puts the $30 and takes $4 back and brings it back to me. He doesn't ring it up, like he doesn't key in the $30 in the cash register, which means that the cash register has no record of the transaction. And he can simply grab the $26 later for himself without the owner ever noticing. Now I am friends with the owner and I'm a law-abiding citizen of my town, and I felt like I have an obligation to let him know. So I told the owner of the place, and he discovered that this employee was stealing with him in this way and in some other ways as well. He was giving some free food to some of his friends and doing some other things that the owner didn't like, and he ended up firing him. Now, I'm also curious, what do you think is a good control to hedge against this type of theft? So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below, what do you think? But personally, I would have the pizza man who bakes the pies create a log of how many pizzas they were making that day, and then I would reconcile that to the cash register. Overall, here are some good ways, good controls to hedge against employee theft. Number 1, make sure you pay a fair wage, and if you can, on the higher end of the industry average. Employees tend to steal from employers who they feel are cheap and not valuing their time or talent. Control number 2 is to have more than one person oversee the money, or in the example of the pizzeria, more than one person in charge of the cash register. Control number 3 is to know your employees and be on the lookout for some sudden changes or apparent devotion to work, working late, someone who wants to work late hours without having anybody else there watching them, maybe because they want to steal some money. Now, lifestyle changes or lifestyles above salary levels, somebody living beyond their means, right, driving a fancy car or things like that. Also, things like drug and alcohol abuse or frequent gambling, all of these are telltale signs you gotta be on the lookout for in your small business. So I hope that you enjoyed the stories and the video, and if you'll take away one thing from this video is that you would review your control environment in your small business and try to see if you can spot any weakness in the controls where an employee can exploit and steal money from you. And if you like the video, give it a big thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one. Also, if you want to learn more from me, you can check out my online courses on various topics, including financial metrics or KPIs, creating a KPI dashboard, accounting interview skills, etc., etc. You could also chat directly with me and ask me your questions if you become a member on Patreon.